Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today I'm discussing 4 Criterion Collection titles that you should own concerning a killer. In some cases a serial killer, but there is a killer and it plays a big role in the plot, if not the central role. So the first of these, and kind of the foundation of all of these movies, one of the great black and white films ever made by one of the great directors, who I recently learned was in Contempt by Jean-Luc Godard, Fritz Lang, in his film M. And I love M. I had only seen the picture once. I remember one day I was sitting at home in summer. It was one of those sales, June or July, whenever that is, for Barnes & Noble Criterion. And I was thinking through the very opening scene and how much I wanted to rewatch the whole film. And I literally just went and bought it, came back home, watched it, loved it all over again. M is the story of a serial killer who has a compulsion to kill and need to kill. Animalistically. It's something that's very difficult to control. And the opening shots, there's a wanted poster in the shadow of the criminal, a little kid, there are some creepy balloons. In my opinion, what Fritz Lang did with balloons in that film is far creepier than what happened with Pennywise in the It story. As much as I like Stephen King's work, this film is so foundational for thrillers, serial killer movies, anything suspenseful. It also asks interesting philosophical questions, questions that are difficult to answer. The police are kind of annoyed by this because it's such a problem in their status quo. It's as if the killer is an inconvenience, as some have said, more than, say, their moral duty at times. It's a very bleak film in that sense. There's a morality to this film that I think might be difficult for some people to accept as they watch it, and I think it holds that special kind of energy, especially since this thing is so dark and scary at times, and still quite shocking. I mean, this is a film from 1931, and I'm filming this in 2025, here almost 100 years later. The film has not aged a day. There is a whistling that has a complicated meaning as the film goes along, involving the serial killer. You're going to get that tune stuck in your head, and I think that helps drive the tension. I can't imagine this genre without M and Peter Lorre's terrific performance in the film. I mean, he sells this role through and through, and even the thieves in town, the gangsters, if you will, kind of get involved in this. Very believable story, very entertaining, and just tragic. Good stuff. So do yourself a favor, if you have not seen M, watch it. You may look at the cover and think, well, that looks kind of old and sort of outdated. No, absolutely not. Now, if we're talking about a killer who can't help it, sort of similarly, although I don't want to say exactly the same thing, there's a film that folks like Martin Scorsese really championed and harped on and got me into, and it did get a 4K a little while ago. This is a Michael Powell film called Peeping Tom that I've talked about on the channel before, that basically wrecked his career because of how controversial it was. It was seen as downright perverted or trashy or obscene. And this is the story of someone who uses a movie camera, literally, to, in some cases, just filming bad movies, or working with bad movies, if you want to say that. But he uses a camera when he, on his downtime, and he hunts down women compulsively and murders them. A true serial killer. The closest thing I can think of to a little bit more modern of a serial killer picture would be Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, which is nastier than this by a lot, and is itself a pretty good film. But the colors in this and the 4K really, really pop off, as do all Michael Powell films. And I did want to say that first and foremost. If you've never seen a Michael Powell film, such as The Red Shoes, which I've only seen on DVD, and even that looks gorgeous, you really need to do that, if for no other reason than the visuals. But I was listening to some comments from Scorsese about this, and he really related to the power of the camera, because in the movie, the camera has like a sword spike knife thing on it. And he knows as a filmmaker how powerful the camera is, and it's a great metaphor in his mind. And I think about the way that he directed Killers of the Flower Moon, reflecting on America's role in cinema and history and his own role in it. And I could see why this movie really affected him. But this guy, the Peeping Tom in this, is just plain creepy. Where he lives is creepy. Him looking through his footage. There are the scene, the very first kill, really reminds me of him in terms of the intensity and the originality and the way it gives you the willies. It's awesome. Peeping Tom will be a little much for some people, although a lot of the film is not all that violent. I mean, a lot of it is kind of like talking and a little bit more in the way of social commentary and so forth. So it's not, say, like Zodiac, right? Not like that film that's constantly trying, uncovering the next stone or whatever. But I find it to be very entertaining. It's a little artistic, beautiful film that I think you should see, Peeping Tom. Now, those are kind of more of the traditional, well, if you can call it that, traditional serial killer films. I wanted to talk a little bit about a film that I like to push on here when this kind of topic comes up. This is what Tarantino called Brian De Palma's best film. This is called Blowout. Some people don't like Blowout. They get a little bit put off by it because I think they're looking for a tense, like, cop-chasing bad guy kind of thriller. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's a great film, and it's an especially good summer 4th of July film. But in this story, so this is obviously a play on Blow Up, that film, but John Travolta is working on adult films, and he's kind of into this like sleazy, throwaway, trashy filmography stuff. And he goes one night out into nature to get a sound that he needs for recording. And in the process of recording this sound, he witnesses something of great political importance and a tragedy, okay? And the rest of the film around this politically based tragedy is him trying to figure out who killed whom. And there ends up being in this one of the great supporting acting kind of villains. And when you see who the villain is, the killer, if you've seen other TV shows or movies, you're going to be like, that was a good casting choice. Man, I'm glad they picked that guy. Great cast in here. I do think it uses its, this patriotic imagery well. When I was listening, kind of refreshing myself on this film, Siskel and Ebert had a really interesting observation that I hadn't thought of that I wanted to share here. They said, in some ways, this kind of uncovering the political truth behind the killings reminded them of like Watergate, for example, or other scandals and how those things blow up or blow out. And I thought that was really neat. So you might, if you watch the film, so this is 1981, if you're able to think about the time period and sort of the environment that came out in, it'll even add a little something to it, I think, when you watch it. So definitely check out Blowout if you haven't, with that in mind. And finally, a film that is in the collection, but I recently got the BFI of it, and I'm in love with this film, and I'm going to push it every chance I can get. So I don't have the Criterion here, I do have the BFI, but you should see Stray Dog, one of Akira Kurosawa's great early films. So Stray Dog dives right into the action immediately. A rookie detective, veteran, well, he's a veteran who's a rookie detective, but played by a young Toshiro Mifune, very young. If you're used to him in older roles where he looks a little bit older, it might almost be startling to you. But he has his pistol stolen on a crowded public transportation, and a lot of the film is him looking for this gun and coincidentally looking for a killer who may or may not be using his gun or using some weapon, and he's worried about, is this my gun or not? And what the film does with that killer, I think, is interesting in terms of the questions it asks the audience and anyone involved with, any kind of obsession or looking for justice. I think we'll probably get into that. But Takashi Shimura is in this as sort of a part of the way into the film. He's sort of a mentor and helps Mifune's character. This film is so beautifully shot. And you can, and I talked about this in my initial review of this, but you can feel the hunger of the director in the film. In terms of how the camera is used so joyfully. almost playfully at times. I've actually been watching Ran, his later work of his, the King Lear version, his version of King Lear, and you can see a real difference in age. And I think for this movie, I think his youth really helped that film and what that film was trying to do. And what happens with the criminal? There's a scene in a field with the criminal that's really beautiful. The killer, that particular whole part of the plot made me want to mention this to you. I do think you're going to find parts of Stray Dog that are as suspenseful as anything Hitchcock put out. So those were 4 films that came to my mind right away from the collection, and I've got a few more over there at the shelf I'm looking at, like that might count. But I wanted to see what you all recommended or what your thoughts were. And if you did like my content today, if you could do me a favor and click the like button, that actually will help grow the channel. If you like discussions about Criterion films, please consider subscribing. I cover that a lot on here. As you can see, I'm a big Western fan, so I cover Westerns and different other stuff as well. But those are my 2 areas I've been covering the most. And we'll see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.